Greetings, book lovers everywhere, and welcome to back to E-Train Talks. I'm your host, E-Train. I'm a 12-year-old literacy advocate, book reviewer, Giving Tuesday Spark leader, and founder of E-Train Talks, Inc., which is now a 501c3 nonprofit, which is super exciting, and that's a mouthful. I do a lot. For about a year and a half, I've had the privilege of interviewing many incredible people in the book world, and it's been an amazing journey, and I'm so grateful for everyone who tunes into my podcast, and every author and literacy advocate, kindness promoter, everybody who comes on. And today is another incredible day. It's hard to believe it, but today I get to welcome, for the second time, one of my all-time favorite book heroes. Sitting across from me, or I guess sitting across from me in this Zoom room, is none other than New York Times bestselling author Stuart Gibbs. Woo!
Hey, Drain, it is a pleasure to be back here.
Yeah, we're so happy to have you. And everybody, if you have not read any of Stuart's books yet, I highly recommend them. They are some of my favorites in the middle grade book world. And you can just see from this is just like a portion of every single book I have of Stuart's. I mean, I don't have every single one of his books, but you could say that this was the amount, the pure stack that he has written.
It's you got to have books by other people, right? You got to spread it out. It's okay.
Yeah, we got to spread the love.
Yes,
Like,
exactly.
I don't want everything to be just dedicated to Stuart Gibbs. How are the other authors who come on here?
That would be terrible. Right.
Yeah. So, speaking of him writing a lot of books, his books have also been sold a lot. He sold over 3 million copies worldwide, and he's just kind of a master of storytelling. So, I had the privilege of meeting Stuart in person when we teamed up with Teen Author Bootcamp and visited a local Title I elementary school. We spoke to their amazing students about the awesomeness of reading, and it's just a favorite memory of mine. And every single kid at that school walked away with a free signed Stuart Gibbs book of their own. And a lot of those kids didn't have a single book to their name. So it was a phenomenal experience, a really humbling experience, because I've been surrounded by books for my whole life. And getting to know other kids who haven't had that same experience was a really great learning experience for them and for me. And enough about that. Let's get right to Stuart's books, because he has a new one coming out, and it is awesome. Spy School Goes North. I had the chance to read an advanced reader's copy, and it is peak Stuart Gibbs. I mean, every single one of his books are peak Stuart Gibbs. They just keep getting better and better. But seriously, Spy School Goes North is epic, and I'm so excited to get into some questions about it.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. With the upcoming release of Spy School Goes North, the 11th book in the Spy School series, gosh, that's a lot. And every single one is just equally as great. So let's turn back the clock to the beginning of Ben Ripley's and really your Spy School journey. So what inspired your beloved series? And I know that you mentioned that you have a love of James Bond. Was that kind of what inspired you to kind of dive into spy books, or was it something else?
Yeah, well, I mean, believe it or not, I probably had the idea when I was around your age.
Mm-hmm.
And because I had just seen my first James Bond movie. This was back when, you had to see a movie in the theater, right? And so it was like old times. Yeah, you really couldn't see one just streaming whenever you wanted. And so you only had the choice of like seeing the movie that was in the theater at the time. So so I was actually old enough to go see a James Bond movie. Saw it with some friends, and we all just, we were just blown away. That James Bond was like the idea of this incredibly cool, suave guy who just could handle all these amazing action sequences at all times. I will say in retrospect that the James Bond movie we saw is probably one of the worst James Bond movies they ever made, if not the worst one. But we didn't have anything to compare it to. We still thought that character was amazing. And so we were kind of all, you sort of imagine yourself as James Bond. Everybody's sort of doing that, and somewhere along the line, I kind of hit on this idea of I really wrote some fan fiction about James Bond's son Jimmy, who in theory would be like me trying to be James Bond, and there was a James Bond movie and book called The Man with the Golden Gun. So I called this story I wrote The Kid with the Golden Water Pistol. And Jimmy's not really a spy. He's just like the whole plot is that the bad guy is ruining all the girls' dresses at school by squirting them with black ink, and Jimmy has to go on a mission to go stop him. But somewhere in the idea, while I was writing that story, I came up with the idea for a spy school that
Mhm.
maybe Jimmy would actually go to a top secret spy school to learn how to be a spy. Because one of the other jokes in the book was that, like, James Bond is never home. You never see him at home. So
Right.
if you're right, if your dad is James Bond, he's not around a lot. Like, so if you want to grow up and be like him, you got to go to a top secret spy school, learn how to be a spy. I it was not the spy school really didn't play a big part in that story. It was just sort of a reference, but over the years, I just kept thinking, man, there's something there to the idea you take all the tropes of spying and then all sort of the familiarity that we have with school, and you combine those two things, and maybe you've got something that has wide ranging appeal.
And it certainly did have wide-ranging appeal. And kind of going back to your movie theater statement,
Mhm.
while you didn't technically, the movies did come out on channels like probably like 2 years later, but though there were only like two channels back then, back in the olden days, everybody.
Yes, yes, yeah. No, you'd see. I mean, cable was around. We didn't have cable. I mean, half the country didn't
Yeah,
actually even have cable access. So, yeah, I think you guys are growing up now saying like, "Oh, you want to watch a movie? It's relatively easy to find it."
yeah,
Uh, we like not every video store had every movie. It was like really for a long time, like you could just see a movie in the theater. That was it, and then maybe it would show up on TV with commercials like
yeah,
2 or 3 years later. And yeah, so imagine Star Wars with commercials. Imagine that. Imagine like you waited and waited and waited. Now it shows up, and you have to watch it being
yeah,
interrupted every 5 minutes, right?
right. And now, oh, you kids have it so easy. It's
Yeah.
Paramount Plus, Peacock, Disney
Right.
Plus,
Yeah.
Hulu,
Yeah.
all
Right.
that uh, hubbub and whatnot.
There's something great about it too. Like if I
Yeah,
want
that's
to
true.
like expose, if I want to show my kids like a great movie, I can be like, oh, I'll get it for you right now. Let me show you this. Or if I want to sort of say like, oh, I want to go back and check out a James Bond movie because I think I want to, do something in the world, or a Mission Impossible movie, or a
Mhm.
Jason Bourne movie. Like I can just pull that up almost instantaneously and do that. Uh, it is research. If I'm watching that, I'm trying to figure out like what I can mine for comedy or even a plot point or something, and I
Sure.
can go watch those things and say like what works, what doesn't work, what could I make fun of.
Yeah. And who is your favorite James Bond actor? Because there have been a lot.
There have I am actually I really do like Daniel Craig. I think how he reinvented that character was great. And then you've got to really go back to Sean Connery, who
Sure.
really created the character. Um, I think as the the series sort of went on, like through Roger Moore and Pierce Brosnan, he sort of became more and more kind of a spoof of himself in a sense. And then Daniel Craig sort of brought it back and made it like this gritty, believable character.
He wasn't just James Bond, he was Bond. James Bond. He
Yes,
really
yeah,
brought that back. I agree.
yes, yeah.
So, and I can bet that it's quite tough to keep churning out all these book ideas, especially for a long series like Spy School. I mean, a lot of authors can barely make it to 3 books, but you've got 11 so far because we've got more coming out in the future, which is super exciting. So, in the beginning, did you have all of your books mapped out with the entire
No.
series? You knew where it was going to go? Or when you pitched it, after you pitched it, with each new book, you just kind of came up with new ideas on the fly?
Well, I mean, yeah, I think it's despite the fact that sort of like the mythology of Harry Potter is that J.K. Rowling had everything in mind. I'm not. I don't know how much of that could honestly be true because when you're selling a a book, you're really usually not selling a series, especially when you're first starting out. Like now, if when I wanted to sell Charlie Thorne, I could go and say like I would like to do a series. But when I was doing spy school, or I was doing the fun jungle, I didn't know it was going to, I had no idea it would be a series. Nobody could promise me it was going to be a series. You had to see how that first book did. And so it didn't even make sense to think of it as a series because it might just end at at one book. And so I could say like, well, I love these characters, I love this world, this is something I'd like to keep going, but uh, really, when I wrote the first book, I had to put everything I could into that first book. I didn't want to say like, oh, okay, well, like, here's only half the story, or well, I'm going to build this whole thing that goes on for 15 books and will finally pay off. Uh, it, I'm not saying somebody couldn't do that. I'm not saying J.K. Rowling really didn't do that. I just think like it's a hard mindset to be in, uh, because I don't know, maybe you're setting yourself up for disappointment. Maybe it's like, I think if you really want to be an author, like, you have to say like, I'm going to write the best book I can, and uh, you know if it becomes a series, great. But often there's a lot of people who just do one-offs too. So what really happened was that I wrote the first book, and then uh was sort of told by the publisher, like, would you like to do a second one? And I was like, yeah, of course I would like to do a second one. But I really had to come up with what the idea was. And um a lot of the time, the where the reason I think authors actually like to do series is because we've done all that work setting up our characters and our world, and we really, like, we fall in love with those characters, and there's more we want to do with those characters. And so a lot of the time, what's driving the next spy school is not really the mission or the plot. It's saying like, where do I want to go with this character, these characters? And so in spy school, I realized that I had set up Erica and her father, but I never given them a scene together.
Mhm.
And I thought, okay, that's an interesting dynamic. What if I put them on a mission together, sort of against their will, and then I stick Ben in the middle of that, and now he's got we have this interesting dynamic here. And a lot of that has just sort of driven the series and it's gone. Now I certainly like to come up with plots, and so I've got plot ideas over here, and I've got like character ideas over here, and then if I can come up with something that combines those two ideas, I'm like, yeah, that's the idea I want to go with. So the other nice thing is that when you have a series and it's been going for a while, um, to me, the Spy School series, I'm always thinking ahead with where my characters can go. I'm always on the lookout for potential plot ideas, and so it for me, um, this series is not that hard to come up with ideas for, because I love it, and there's so many. It's very open ended. There's so many evil things bad guys can do. There's so many places in the world I could send them. So it's. I realize this is an incredibly long-winded answer, but it's to say that, like, it, this series couldn't go on if I wasn't constantly like thinking of ideas for it, and I am just constantly like, oh, that could work, that could work, that could work. If I get to a point where that's not happening, then I end the series. But the reason we're at 11 books now, and I'm at work on the 12th, and I've got ideas for ones after that, is because this series just is something that I can really. It's not that hard for me to generate new ideas, and I'm excited to do it all the time, and
Yeah.
always looking forward to the next book and the next book and the next book.
For those of us who haven't, or I mean, I'm not one of the us, but I guess for some people who haven't yet read the Spy School books, maybe the series, as I've mapped it out in book reviews, or as you've said it before, isn't really making much sense to them because, we're 11 books through. So why don't you give us a brief description, a brief synopsis of Spy School Goes North? Because
Okay.
there's a lot packed into it, but it's all gonna make sense,
It
everybody.
will look. I do try to write books so that anybody can pick them up anywhere in the series,
True. Yeah.
and um, so if you've not read another one of the Spy School books, and you're saying like, hey, hey, this is the book you can get. This is, someone gives it to you. It's the one in the library. Uh, you do not have to have read books 1 through 10 in order to be able to understand book 11. And in fact, book 11 actually sort of is kind of like a reinvention of the
That's
series,
true. Yeah.
because some things have happened to the original Spy School. So Spy School has kind of changed a bit, and we have just a small group of kids training at a remote spy training facility in Alaska, and they've got a couple adults who are training them, and one of them, Cyrus Hale, who has a long history in the CIA, also has some enemies, and very quickly in the first book, Cyrus is kidnapped by one of his enemies, and so our students have to mount a rescue mission, which then leads to them sort of discovering that this enemy of Cyrus's really has a grudge against our country, and it ties into all sorts of Alaskan history, and that he's got an evil plot that they have to figure out what that is, and then figure out how to thwart it.
You're always writing new books, and you always have new ones coming out. So these are just to name a few, and
Right?
maybe you have more that I didn't say, or maybe you have more to share about the books that I do say. So you
Okay,
have Once Upon a Tim Book 4 coming out.
that's
You
great.
have the Evil Spy School graphic novel coming out.
Right,
Everybody who didn't know, the first Spy School book had a graphic novel out recently. And
right.
Charlie
And
Thorne,
Spy Camp
yeah.
graphic novels
Oh,
are
Spy
great.
Camp as well, yeah.
Yeah,
And Charlie Thorne and the Royal Society
right.
also.
Yes,
So
yeah.
can you give us sneak peeks into these upcoming reads? And if you have any more, feel free to share.
I mean, I think that's going to be the brunt of the next couple of months after Spy School goes north. So um, the fourth Once Upon Tim is The Quest of Danger. That is my illustrated series following a young peasant who does not like being a peasant back in olden times, so his only option is to become a knight. It is my silliest series by far. It is it is not bound by any sort of reality. It's playing in the world of mythology and fairy tales and all that. And so in this one, uh, Tim and his friends they are sent on a quest to recover a very important trident that is important to the Mer people, and they have to go to the city of Atlantis, which has not sunk into the ocean yet. In fact, they believe it to be the safest city in the world, and there will be all sorts of adventures as they things do not go well on
Mm.
this trip. So there's all sorts of there's krakens and cyclops and of course the really dangerous ones are always the people. So that U.S. Spy School graphic novel, again, working with the incredibly talented Anjan Sarkar, who has who's done the previous two graphic novels. All of the Spy School books at this point, we're planning on turning into graphic novels, but Anjan has it's not easy. He's got a lot of work to do on
Right.
all of them. So he's doing about one a year. So this is the retelling of Evil Spy School. And then the fourth, Charlie Thorne, where Charlie Thorne, who is always the world pretty much the smartest person alive on Earth, who even though she's 13 now, has been forced against her will to track down things that the greatest minds from throughout history have discovered, but felt were too dangerous to trust the rest of humanity with. All these things have the power to be relatively like a power that in the wrong hands would be bad for humanity. And this is now something that Isaac Newton discovered and hid away. But as the way that it's been hidden is a little different from the other books,
Mm.
and so it allows. I don't want to give away too much, but Charlie will end up on another globe-trotting adventure to all sorts of exotic locations.
I saw that you have a new TikTok page where you're promoting your new
Yes,
book, Spy School Goes North.
yeah.
And everybody, he's not doing like those TikTok dances or anything like that. Although
No,
he does have a giant version of his book that none of you can have.
right,
Uh,
it's right there. That's it. That's the
yeah, right,
generation.
right
Right.
there.
Yeah. Yes.
So
Uh,
it's cool. Like you're connecting with your fans in the process,
right.
and I know that maybe this is just like a one-time thing for your new book, or maybe you're going to continue it. But what kind of videos can we expect to see from you? I know I'm talking
Um,
to an author, like there's some kind of influencer.
no, yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm still, I'm
I'm
like
still learning.
TikTok. Basically, there's sort of like these standard things. Like even when you go on TikTok, it's like, hey, you could do this, you could do this. Like, why don't
Yeah.
you show everybody your office? Why don't you, show everybody, your neighborhood? It'll probably be versions of those, but I'm trying to come up with ways that, like, if I do them, they don't look like everybody else's. So,
That's
can
cool.
I do a funnier version of how to show you my office? Although you're seeing my office right now, so I
Yeah.
don't know.
Sorry, everybody, giving away his videos.
Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, the issue with um, TikTok and all social media is it takes time to do it right,
Yeah.
and that is not something I have a tremendous amount of time.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Just like kind of like a fun on the side kind of thing.
yeah, right, yeah. So right, if you've seen them, I didn't work too. I mean, they're just really a couple
Yeah.
shots in one place, but it would be nice to move around and not
Mhm.
always have me standing in the same spot, and so that then it involves some time and effort to figure that out.
Yeah, true. So I actually read on your website that in November of 2021, which is almost 2 years ago, which is
Hmm.
really crazy, you joined the Advisory Council of Conservation Nation. That's
Yeah,
a cool name, Conservation Nation.
yeah.
Can you tell us your experience working as a member of the council and why did you join it in the first place?
Well, actually, one of my closest friends from college is one of the people involved with starting up Conservation Nation. His name's Larry Hanauer. He is uh, very committed to the environment. And in fact, Conservation Nation kind of has existed in a form before. It was the Friends of the National Zoo,
Oh, cool.
which is and the National Zoo is in Washington D.C. Actually, run kind of was run by the Smithsonian and really functioned because of the Friends of the National Zoo. That they provide all sorts of support to it, and sadly, they're under. I really don't want to get too political, but there was some political stuff going on with because the zoo and the Friends of the National Zoo, and so they ended up sort of splintering off to become Conservation Nation, and they recognized that there were some areas of conservation that other organizations weren't that focused on. One of which was that a lot of people who go into conservation, there's not a lot of diversity, or there wasn't, and so they're trying to support getting more diverse people involved in conservation. Maybe people who, instead of sending somebody uh, from an entirely different part of the world to a place to do conservation work, maybe you get people who are already there to spearhead the things and do the conservation work. So that's part of their plan. I am a little bit more involved with like them trying to figure out new ways to educate students about conservation, and maybe ways that they can get you know more writing involved, like more conservation ideas into books that kids are reading, and that sort of thing.
That's awesome. And I think yeah, that's super awesome. And I like that you're you seem to be perfect for that field. Just getting kids involved, getting kids excited about all these different kinds of important topics in the world, whether it's your books or conservation. I can see you really like leading the charge for students in a school, and then they're gonna be the next, maybe like Jane Goodall of
Right,
the world,
yes,
or
yes.
next Greta Thunberg.
Yeah, yeah, right. I mean, that's yeah. I mean, we certainly want people to think of working in conservation as a great career, or to
Yeah.
you know something they can do. And there are ways to do conservation work uh, in your spare time,
Mhm.
different ways. And so, but again, like how much spare time does anybody have these days, and
Right.
what are you gonna spend it doing, that sort of thing. So yeah, I look. I mean, Conservation Nation is not the only wonderful conservation organization out there. There are plenty of them, and there's the Wildlife Conservation Society and the World Wildlife Fund, and rhinos .org, and oh my gosh, there's the Natural Resources Defense Council, and just so many I mean, there's a lot of work to do, and there's a lot of really devoted people doing it, but a lot of the time, uh, they're like what these organizations have found is right, that the more you can, if you want to make sure that conservation works in another country, you have to really um, make sure that the people in that country are invested in the conservation, and you're not just walking in there saying like, "Hey, do this," or "We're making a national park. Like, stay out of it." Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I've recently come across your internet series, Mission Right, with Stuart Gibbs. So there you discuss the components of a good story, from the anatomy of a scene to the characters to revisions. And in honor of this awesome mission, will you share why you decided to create Mission Right, and maybe share
Uh,
this piece of writing advice?
oh, okay. Well, to be 100% honest, it was not my idea. It was my publisher's idea to create it. Which so they the publishing company, there were lots of really wonderful people there who worked on that, Simon and Schuster, and so they were the ones who thought we should do this educational series, and so I worked with a film crew and a lot of people, and we really put together. I think there's some great videos. Hopefully, we'll get some more out there at some point. Again, it's all about having the time and energy and money to get it done. Um, but yeah, and it's not just, it's a video series, but then if people want to go a little bit deeper on that, or I mean, it can be used in schools and things like that, and each video also sort of, there's like a lesson plan. So if you go to Mission Right, you can get further things to do to work on your writing, and those lesson plans are all done by my dear friend Dr. Rose Brock, who's a
Oh yeah.
professor of library science. And Rose has she does all the study guides in the back of my books anyhow. So if you get one of
Cool.
my books, a lot, they'll have study guides in the back, or there's some, you can find them online, like on the Simon Schuster website, and now you can find them at Mission Right. She did these specific sort of further education exercises that go with that. So you asked me for a piece of writing advice, and so I think a lot of the time when young folks like you want to write something, I think there's like a rush, to, like this idea that like you have to start writing it immediately. I have the idea, I'm going to go run it, and I find that it actually makes sense to take a little time, or maybe a lot of time. I spend a lot of time working on my ideas before I start writing them. So I'm brainstorming out ideas. I'm developing an outline for the story, and I think sometimes kids will say like, "Oh man, but like I want to write this story now." Like if I do that, it's like a big waste of time. But it actually probably ends up saving time, because one thing it probably prevents is you getting halfway into a story and saying like, "Oh gosh, I don't know where this goes." Whereas if you take the time to work it out and maybe outline and say, "Oh, this is where my story is going to end up," you won't get stuck. You won't maybe get as much writer's block in the process.
That's
So
good.
I that now again, that's what works for me. As a
Mhm.
piece of advice, it does not mean every single person has to do it, but I maybe give it a try.
That's something that I definitely need to work on because I'm more of a pantser, not a plotter.
Right.
And I gotta find like that happy medium.
Right. Now there are, I mean, that's the thing. There are pantsers out there who are very successful.
Like
But
writing everything on a napkin in a coffee shop kind of pantsers.
yes, yes. So we know. So everybody knows. Like we divide them in the plotters and the pantsers. I'm a plotter, and then somebody who is pantser flies by the seat of their pants and does all this. And
That's what it stands for?
yeah, yeah,
Oh,
that's where it comes from.
I did not
Flying
know
by the seat
that.
of your pants. Yeah, yeah. Which is a weird phrase, and I don't know
Yeah.
where that even came from, to be honest. But yeah, that's and I don't know if you ever come to, like, if this ever comes up on a panel, but like the plotters and the pantsers are always like, what, like, that's how you write. But I do think, like, rushing into a story
Mhm.
is tricky. It's not to say it can't possibly work, but that's my system. So
And also, Rose Brock was kind of the editor-in-chief of the Hope Wins anthology, which
it is, yes,
Stewart also wrote in with a bunch of other authors.
yes,
So we
yeah.
should go read that too.
Yeah, yeah. Hope Wins, which is all these amazing middle grade authors writing a story from their own lives
Mhm.
of them overcoming something, and it sounds like it could be really sad, but it's actually very life affirming and
Mhm.
teaching you how to overcome adversity of all sorts.
Yeah. And I also think it's cool because a lot of kids think that authors are just like 90-year-old white people just behind a computer all day and do who aren't real or just like robots who aren't real people. And
Right.
like kind of hearing their stories, like seeing reading their grief kind of helps you connect with them in a deeper level, which can also kind of help you connect with their books and find nuances, which is
Yeah.
really special for readers.
And it's not always, I should say, it's not always grief, right? I mean,
Yeah, that's true. That's
some
true.
of us are writing about very, very tough things
Yeah.
that happen in our lives, but then you could have Max Brauer writing about how his father got the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile to show up at his school, and how as a kid he was mortified by this, but
Oh, devastating.
yes, yes, but then you sort of go like, what? That sounds great, yeah. So
Yeah. I mean, if you're a middle schooler, then that would you probably relate. Like, I don't think I would want my dad showing or mom showing up in an Oscar Mayer wiener truck at my school, unless they give everybody hot dogs. Then I think it'd be a bit.
yeah, I don't think that happened. Yeah, but yeah,
Yeah.
so that's sort of the thing is like, right, a
Yeah.
very well intended thing by his father turns into
Mhm.
a bit of a
Yeah.
mortifying experience for him.
So, your fun jungle books are all about saving the planet and protecting our wildlife. You even have a Save the World page on your website devoted to highlighting environmental organizations doing good in the world. And as an avid environmentalist and conservationist, I'm curious to know if you have any pets or animals of your own that you kind of treat with that same kind of love that you may to animals in the wildlife.
I do have a dog. Um, when I was a kid, I did used to try and catch lizards and snakes, and
So, what kind of this is my final question. Since I've already asked you my typical last question for a lot of the authors that I talk to, this is kind of a special one that I've never really asked before. So, what kind of setting do you enjoy writing in the most? Is it like a quiet place, maybe in the midst of chaos? Maybe it's like a writing retreat with like a scenic view or something like that?
no, this is it right here.
Yeah, just the
This is where I
opposite.
like to write. I in fact I don't really like it to write other place. Like if I'm in a place with a scenic view, I'm gonna want to get up and go hiking.
That's true.
And so I'm terrible about writing um, other places now. But I get very inspired by places with scenery. So you can get to the idea of like what is actually writing, right? So like people think of it as this idea: I'm sitting here at the very computer I'm talking to you through, and I'm typing, and that's right. But to me, like part of that writing process is again coming up with those ideas and thinking about it. And so if I am in a like say I was in Alaska and I was sort of going around hiking around and kayaking and starting to think like, hey, this would be a cool place for an action sequence, and that then might have possibly turned into this very book right here. So there is the brainstorming part of writing, which can be very chaotic. And I'm going to a museum. I'm traveling. I'm going to the zoo. Those are all great ways to get ideas for me. But when it's the actual I'm going to be at the computer writing, this is where I do it. It's a very quiet place.
Mhm.
I do not write in coffee shops or in airports or anything like that. I just write it
Yeah.
out.
That's nice, and I like that, and I like so you put up your copy, I'm gonna put up my copy right
Right,
here.
there we go. There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whew.
Spice World Goes North coming out very soon, and you're all going to love it, and I hope that you all love this interview. Thank you, Stu, so much for coming on E-Train Talks, talking about your writing, and we are all we just cannot wait for Spy School Goes North to come out. It is I can guarantee you that everybody watching, you are going to find yourself on the edge of your seat like you're at a James Bond movie in the theaters.
All right. That's high
And
praise, man. So thank
yeah,
you so much.
yeah, absolutely. And I'm also excited to share that I'm going to be featuring Stuart's books and story for all of October on my Bar Mitzvah website. So you can find my Bar Mitzvah website on eTrain Talks. It's not really its own website. It's just like it's inside of a website. So I don't know why I call it a Bar Mitzvah website. let's not get into details. Just you can find it on etraintalks.com. And seriously, this has been such a blast, Stuart. And everybody, once you're done reading Spice Goes North, you're going to want to start all the way from the beginning at Spy School Book 1. And then you're going to want to go all the way back to 10. But then when you're there, then the next book might be out. And then you have the graphic novels. Then you have the Charlie Thorne series. It's really a never-ending cycle because Stuart's just always coming out with the new books, and he always has so many other books that you haven't read yet. So he's just trying to trap you in a paradox, and there's no escape. But it's a good paradox.
I think as far as paradoxes are concerned, this is one of the better ones, probably.
Yeah. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. Stay safe. Keep reading. By reading, I mean read Stuart's books. And yeah.
Read everybody's books.
Yeah,
Read them all.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.